Thank you. Thank you, Jacques, for that lovely intro and a beautiful opening poem that feels very fitting, Mary Oliver's. One of my favorites, and poems about death are something that you're going to hear from me tonight. So that was perfect. I'd like to just give a general content warning for the poems I'm going to read. I'm a vet, and some of the poems I'm going to read are talking about euthanasia, about death of pets, about slaughter of animals, and if any of these topics are triggering for you, or you need to take some time to step away for yourself, please feel free to do so. It is heavy stuff, but hopefully there'll be some lightness as well. And yeah, I look forward to any questions at the end. I'm going to start with a poem for my mom, who's joined us tonight. I was a cell inside my mother when she was born. I am a convergence of all the women who have come before me. I have existed since my mother came into existence. A cell, inside her body, my first devoted home of love. I was there, nesting inside when my mother took up knitting as a young nursing student. She would ride the bus home from campus, feet propped against the window, body splayed across 3 seats, a defiant stretch of self-assurance. She bought a beat-up second-hand car with her savings and drove her friends to the beach on the weekends. I smelt the salt-stained air tripping in through her pores. Once, in the dirt of a foreign country, she turned and spat in the smirking face of a man who dared to grab her ass unasked. In that moment, her bravery traveled into the DNA inside the cell that would still become the idea of me. My mother hitchhiked across Europe alone, a lonely suitcase of possibility. She got severely seasick, but still worked as a cook on a boat in Greece. She camped by the coast and bathed in the ocean, lived off spanakopita and wine for 6 weeks. I rocked within her, the constant motion of our feet hereditary. My mother was one of 4 women in a class of 60 men completing her MBA in the 80s, back when the world was still all chauvinistic condescension. Later, she sang Queen's "We Are the Champions" after winning an award for her business ingenuity. I vibrated through the crescendo, wriggled myself free, another inch closer to being. So when the man says I'd be prettier if I smiled more, I become a doctor instead. Get my degree with its prancing distinction and do not smile at the man. I was born with my mother's grit and determination. When my friend asks where I get my weird clothes, says I dress like an old lady, I say thank you. I have already seen the world through the eyes of my mother. This next poem is about death and the perspective of it from a vet, the exhaustion of it from a vet. Finding my face. I gather my face, collect the right amount of grief and care into the corners of my eyelids, rearrange my mouth into this is the right thing to do. Take a deep breath before I push open the door to enter my consult room, turned cry chamber, turned group therapy, turned hospital with the loving family gathered, turned funeral home, the place where I help another loved one exit this life. My face has no more capacity, finds I'm sorry for your loss, while the rest of me is emptied, turned a dry husk by the day and the repeated process this goodbye has become. My aching is distant, numbed by quantity, by disconnect or by the glass of wine I'm already thinking of pouring as soon as I get home. Home, where my dogs will greet me with tails and tongues still alive. where I will slump into the relief of warm bodies who can still love unrestrained. Still, there was this morning, me crouched on the floor with cheeks stained salty as I held his paw, the last connection to life. I mourned with the couple who the week before had told me of their engagement on the beach with Axel, their only four-legged witness. Their need to declare love in his presence before we let him go was enough to leave me quaking with the flood of his loss. The goodbye collapsing my face into the grieving too. This next poem is about one of the first times I had to perform a euthanasia, and it was my first time as a adult responsible person for an animal's life, making the decision for my own pet, compared to as a child, your parents making that decision. And this is for my childhood dog, Frisky. I became an angel of death. I would have rolled over into the sun if I thought it could have given you 1,000 more perfect days. I would have fetched every stick ever thrown away and brought it back to piece you together again. You who unleashed my love. You who unburied my wag with your enthusiasm for life. I have always known you would not live forever, but I did not want to miss your end. Could I do it? Be the one to end your life? With your love, I survived everything. You shrank my loneliness down to the size of a treat, and then you swallowed it whole. I had 13 happy years with you until, unwillingly, I had to decide your fate. Did I have the strength to master my own heart and be brave for you? I reached for peace, created the perfect end, breakfast, steak out of my hand like a queen. Your last day bathed in sunlight. We took a walk in our mountains, your legs no longer able to carry you in a straight line. I became your compass instead, carried you home when you tired. You fell asleep in my arms, the weight of your trust, the most precious of burdens. Holy creature of love, we lay in the sun together, you on my chest, your body curved into mine as you played tug of war with my mind, never stilling my hand from its constant stroke of your side. Know that I am forever changed by the existence of you. You, with the underbite, who taught me how to never lose my smile. Letting you go now, my last act of love. All too soon it had arrived, the final moment. I clip your fur, occlude the vein, watch for blood, connect the deadly syringe. Best friend of fur, you have blessed my life with the trust of your bark. Now I let you go gently, hold you in my arms past your last memory. For the first time, I was not the Grim Reaper. For you, I became an angel of death instead. The next poem is, I've been having a lot of fun writing from perspectives of different things, personifying things and that kind of thing. I think it's interesting to give voices to things that don't actually have voices. So this poem is from the perspective of the euthanasia syringe. I am prepared first. Before you focus on the living, You fill me until I spill over blue death. Then you lay me down and turn to tenderness. Always comfort the dying, even when they want to taste your blood. We both hold our breath as you plunge into the vein. Red is my favorite color. It always precedes me. Once I saw myself mirrored in your eyes, the cold blue of endless ocean, my skin the echo of emptiness. I am prepared for relief. No, you only reach for me when you have nothing else left to give. It's not easy being the last resort. We both know that. I watch you comfort. Your words are never enough to claw through the grief, but still, sometimes they thank you afterwards. Mine is a thankless task. They are always surprised by how quickly I work. Life leaves within seconds of my arrival. It has always been this way. You're there to catch them as they fall. Somehow you always slow my gravity-fueled momentum. Afterwards, when the room empties and I go back into the darkness, I contemplate what a relief it is to still be alive. This one's alternate names for veterinarian after Danae Smith. 1. Witness for the voiceless. 2. Discoverer of the hidden secrets of the body with only a map of clues from the owner. 3. Healer. 4. Translator of silent pain. 5. Injector of the death serum, silencer of heartbeats, hastener of the inevitable end. 6. Arm around the shoulder of the bereaved. 7. Murderer or miracle worker, depending on the day. 8. Teeth tamer. 9. Sponge for money and verbal abuse. 10. Punching bag, scratch post, thunder vest, lickable friend on 2 legs. 11. Therapist. 12. Suicide risk. 13. Not a real doctor. 14. A real doctor, dentist, anaesthetist, pathologist, surgeon, radiologist, pharmacist, behaviorist, dermatologist, neurologist, and more. 15. Overachiever who learns to accept failure. 16. Animal lover who has to learn to like people to survive. Next poem is a little bit newer, and it's a bit of a fantasy type poem. A fantasy in which flight or fight responds. An enormous, vicious, unsocialized Rottweiler lunges at me, and I shoot out a missile that instantaneously transmogrifies him into the beast within the beast. Now he is stalking me on 2 legs, a man leering with teeth bared, fangs hungry for my flesh. My adrenal glands pulse, grow wings and exit via my belly button. They hover next to my shoulders, my winged protectors, uniform in the red of survival. I am dilated. Epinephrine and fear battle through my bloodstream. My heart leads the march. My lungs beat in time, my own private squadron of oxygenation saints. I conjure a bayonet in my hand, hurtle it towards him with the force of 1,000 Me Toos. It plunges between his legs and he is zapped into a mosquito, another predator, still bloodlusting for his prey. My fist stands at attention, a mighty army of fingers propelled by the force of my fight. I strike him down, watch as he collapses into gravity on the tiles, another useless bug on his back. I have never been more wide-eyed or flushed with relief, conqueror of the beast who was about to destroy me. Well, that's the sad vet poems out of the way. Congratulations if you made it through it. Now we'll move on to the sad slaughterhouse poems. The first one I'd like to read of these is the poem that won second in the National Poetry Prize earlier this year. And I still think it's the best poem I've written yet. So I'll try and better it one day, but for now, this is the best I've got. And just for a little bit of context before I get into these, I spent a year as part of my compulsory community service year as a vet here in South Africa, working at a slaughterhouse as well as at a welfare organization. And a lot of poems have been born from that because it's quite an experience to live through, quite a thing to witness every day is slaughtering. So this poem, here it goes. A new veterinarian spends a compulsory year working at a slaughterhouse. I have watched death, have become so familiar with slaughter in the last 204 days that I will see it with my eyes closed, even 2 years later. My white gumboots splattered red, the bare white walls and steel frames echoing with the growl of saw splitting sternum. The dull thud of another hide tossed down a chute to somewhere other than here. The cold death banging into me as I fight my way through the crush of carcasses to reach the chiller's exit sign. To survive, I separated myself from the living. Raced home to scrub myself clean. No soap could chew through the smell of sulfur, of 800 sheep packed tight as coffins in a mass grave. I haunted the compulsory hours, a silent witness to each ending, there but not there. I did not speak against the prodders or the whips. I did not remove the calf left to watch its mother stunned. I did not call out after the truck overloaded into a trample of death. Life was eviscerated and courted every day. The person I thought I was bled out. No longer can I hold myself holy. I'm 15 again at boarding school, watching 2 girls clamp the pillow over another's head. It takes 5 minutes until unconsciousness. For 2, I did nothing, just stood there, complicit. So in line with personification, I've been writing a few poems from the perspective of the slaughterhouse as this being, and this is one of them. It's also a lot of fun, surprisingly, for such a topic, for me anyway, writing about it. The slaughterhouse speaks to the poet. You have been inside me, though neither of us were given a choice. You know how white I am. You know how much I love to shine, how I glow when I am as spotless as a polished gun. Do you think they chose my red bricks on purpose? Are they meant to camouflage the truth of the blood I have drained away? When I have only the chilled carcasses and the cold night air for company, I exhale. Don't feign surprise. You must know I hold my breath for the blood. We are the same, you and I, both architects of death. I am just of superior design. I will outlast you, you who named yourself kind. My existence is inevitable. You know this. So you can call me loss, call me graveyard's carriage, call me home for the murdered. It does not matter. At least I don't run from myself anymore. I pull in my breath, slaughter my reserve, and get the job done. I have no time for excuses. You are never actually that busy vaccinating dogs. I don't need to see your guilt or the way you bunker yourself into something small and unnoticeable. There are no windows in me to let the light in. We both know this. I know the shower cannot wash away the acrid smell of the fear you were a silent witness to. Death takes getting used to. You'll numb eventually too, won't shudder when the blood spurts, won't nightmare yourself awake. And if you don't, you'll just leave. The blonde one did, the one with the blue hair too. None of you are as strong as I am. I know my place in this battle, soldier for death. I feed people, build muscle from muscle, trigger blood and empty bone. Even after you're gone, I will still be here. Then back to my own voice again for a moment. Sentenced. Every morning I drag myself to that sulphurous prison at 7 a.m., even in the winter, when snow grazed on the mountain tops and everything turned to ice. Maybe that was the bravest I'll ever be. My bloody determination not to quit, to get on with it, a young vet unprepared for this world. There, even if my being there meant nothing, didn't stop 1,200 sheep from being slaughtered in a day, each afraid and resisting that conveyor belt to death. Even if I stopped counting and instead just walked between the cells, a mindless guardian of lost causes. Some mornings I stood still as a gravestone in the chiller at 4 degrees centigrade for 2 hours, watching carcasses hoisted into a coffin of trucks. My official seal, a thread of numbered plastic, locking them into the cold darkness. Their only eulogy. I did not know of the nightmares that would linger then. I wake crushed in the morbid grip of bleating bodies on the conveyor, moving me away from the light and closer to where I press my skull between the steel rods, let the current stun me into a dissociation while the shackles hoist my ankles to the rail. I am suspended between the twitching bodies bleeding beside me until they too clot into stillness. I lose my hands and feet first, then my head is tossed into a bin. My unblinking eyes stare up at my carcass, now skinned and gutted. Liver, spleen, heart hooked apart, I am courted, inspected, roller marked and tipped over the precipice into imprisonment. An icy room without an exit. This is my exit. I am another beast, good only for slaughter. The last of the slaughterhouse poems before we move on to slightly lighter topics. This poem was inspired by Patricia Smith's poem Skinhead, which is personified or speaking from someone else's perspective and putting yourself in the shoes of someone very far removed from yourself. In the poem, Patricia speaks as a white kind of neo-Nazi character. So this came from watching that poem in the slaughterhouse context, thinking of the people that, how can you understand how people can do certain things, and yet you can if you just try. A simple man. Throats are my business. My eyes focus on nothing but throats for 12 hours at a time. I love the silver bleat of blade. My knife gets me 8 smooth slashes before I have to rinse off the blood. Twice I went the wrong way against the sharpening steel. My knuckles paid the price in red. But I'm a quick study. Only took me 7 days and 4,200 jugulars to become this fast. They hang bleeding for 7 minutes, but I only need 7 seconds with them. Them are sheep, or they were before they met me. I didn't dream of this job. Can't say what I imagined, but it sure didn't involve so much red. I'm more of a green guy myself, but guess it's all the same in the end. Without the light, everything would be black and white, alive and dead. Here, they're not. For me, there's the throat, blood, then product. I don't see much in between. I don't see before. Before is a tunnel, a dark hole with a conveyor belt to the outside. I am the first stage of after. The after is meat. Meet the maker, that's what they call me around here. I've always had a steady hand. Mama said I used to plait my sister's hair, said no one could do a neater braid than me. The worst is when there's a squirter and my glasses get so red I can't see a damn thing. Everyone's got to wait while I clean them. I don't like to keep death waiting, not with so many mouths to feed. Oh, I sleep just fine at night, thank you. You would too, after 12 hours on your feet. It's physical, this job. Sheep aren't going to bleed themselves, I always say. They need me, and I need them. Need the red and the green that it brings. Food on the table. Hot water for a shower. You know, the basics. I'm a simple man, really. On the weekend, I pray. Thank you for bearing with me through all the heavy poems. I'll try to get a little bit lighter. This poem is one inspired by a true story. One time I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a frog sitting in my hand. Now, of course, that's a story you have to write a poem about. I spent years trying to come up with the poem that needed to come from that story. And I think I finally got somewhere with it. So it's beginning with a frog and ending in an airport. I wake with a frog in my hand. True story. It is the middle of a cool autumn night and I am in the guest room. My mother still awake and reading on the other side of the wall. Prince Charming is perched in the palm of my hand. A cold, wet pebble of surprise, crowned by eyes blinking up at me. The prince, who is a frog, in my hand, croaks for a kiss, for the soft release it would bring him from his cursed existence. I am too gay and too sad to even consider the possibility of metamorphosis. I cannot kiss him, not even to forget the curse of her airport lips on repeat in my mind. I am puddled by my ache for her, only a month into my new emptiness. I read once that a frog will shed and then eat its own dead skin. I cannot shed her yet, cannot pretend to swallow the past. She is a shadow skin, still clinging to me. This poem is a pantoum and it's just been published in the latest issue of New Contrast. Beautiful as always. Gender-based violence, a South African pantoum. There is an epidemic of violence here. Every day a prowl of newspaper headlines beats out another name. Another girl did not make it home. Another body. Every day another prowl of newspaper headlines, but by tomorrow we have forgotten her name. She did not make it home. Another body buried in pieces in an unmarked grave. By tomorrow we have forgotten her name. The government says things will change, but she is buried in pieces in an unmarked grave. Nothing changes here. There is no sentence for his crime. The government says things will change, but protects the system that raises their boys to love violently. Nothing will change here. There are no sentences for their crimes. A woman visits a post office and leaves as a boxed body, not protected by the system that raised these men whose violent love beat out another name. Another girl visits a man and leaves as a body in a box. There is an epidemic of violence here. Statistic in waiting. In the grocery store, my love lets go of my hand and we part. The red sea of cold meats and bulging tomatoes splitting us beneath the stranger's condemning eyes. Our love must be a burning bush, a miracle in the way it is still surviving. Our gender is enough to mark us target in this land, dressed permanently in black for all the girls who did not make it home, who will not grow old. Together we are another statistic in waiting. So we choose security estates and townhouse complexes. Do not dream of existing in a freestanding home with no neighbors pressed close enough to share the scrape of empty plates. We do not dare to imagine electric fenceless gardens to hold wraparound porch silence in our future. At the traffic circle, a man screams lesbian at me, and I do not know whether this makes me safer or more vulnerable, as being named what I am. I know only that we do not go on date nights, only date days, that I learned to watch my back in the dark before I learned what love was. I do not know if or when the newspaper's daily prayer will be my name. This poem is Etymology of a Queer Becoming after Ollie O'Neill. I spend afternoons in the mud, marry my Barbies before I know that this is a political act, that Ken exists to play at marriage with. My make-believe family is already complete without him. I keep all my English teacher's notes. 13 and infatuated, I do not know to name this obsession. Do not know it should be named at all. Instead, I write bad poetry and collect her signatures in a secret drawer. I sit at the front of the class, get 98%, and the only gold star I want is the teacher's smile directed at me. I'm not sure what lesbian is, but I know that it is bad. A word flung like spitballs into the face of another girl in the class. I lock myself away. My brain a bathroom stall of safety where I scribble on the walls. Brian, Brandon, boys, boys, boys. It takes me months of Googled, am I a lesbian, quizzes to even give myself a silent name. I am 16 and in love for the first time. I write songs about a girl with red hair, blush beneath the covers in the dark as I lock my words into a diary. Let the pages become the keeper of my fluttering fantasies. My hand tingles in the places love has brushed past at the school play rehearsals. I live unrequited. I am drunk, have lost my first kiss to drink, lost my first experience of touch to a love that knows only take. I did not say no, but afterwards I wish I had. At the gay bar, I watch dykes dance and feel lonely, feel like I do not belong. I walk in the pride parade, but I am not glitter enough. I do not have enough rainbow in me to fit in with all this carefree. There are no quiet, queer coffee shops for me to write poetry in, so I climb into my closet of straight friends, try on stereotypes like a kid playing dress up. The outfits do not fit, not butch enough to discard dresses, not femme enough for heels. I am queer but not alternative enough, out but not proud enough. Now, how many of you have had friendships that have faded away without too much explanation? But this next poem is about that. Grigio girls. We disappeared into silence. Unexplained mutual avoidance on tiptoe past each other's bedroom doors. We lived in the same house, but managed to never be in the kitchen at the same time for 5 months. I memorized the song of the creaking floorboard from the bathroom to your bedroom until it became as familiar to me as your secrets once were. Ear pressed to the wall, my stomach empty and dishes piling up on my desk, I waited for the last creak to fade, determined to not have to face you. The doors between us already locked, our friendship already dried out and dead like the leaves that once fell around us, from the yellowwood tree we spent afternoons beneath, sharing bottles of wine with a pack of cards, the best company, aside from one another. We battled it out for the glitter of the cheap plastic crown we bought to coronate queen of the cards, both so competitive that sometimes our friendship felt like a game. I guess we both lost. But how can I say I don't miss you? Don't still mourn the loss of us, day drunk together at a gin festival, glasses of exotic jewels in our fists, each another gleaming mark that we were here, together. I, who after working 12-hour shifts for 3 weeks, spent my first day off with you, tipsy, singing Grigio girls in the car drive home. I still don't know when the silence crept in to replace our song months later. Both of us so afraid of the conflict that it remained unbroken. The loss of you cemented into my history when you officially unfriended me without a single word passed between us. I don't know if you knew why. I never did, but by then the space that distanced us was insurmountable. Okay, I'm nearly there. I've got 3 poems left. I hope that's still okay. Ode to the Razor. The first time we met, I was 7 years old. You were my mother's before I stole you, tiptoed with you rolled into my favorite washcloth, a secret ill-gotten beauty pageant award. You accompanied me into the bath where I introduced you to my limbs. That morning at school, I had met their dark forest for the first time. All day, their thick veil was all I could see. You swooped into the rescue, my companion in de-shaming. Together, we rid my legs and arms of their embarrassing thicket, left them a mannequin of beauty instead. I kept you close from then. When I didn't have time to visit you, I chose cotton over flesh, wore shorts to the pool. At 10, you met my toes, after their free sprouting had been pointed out at the school athletics day. At 12, a boy in my swimming team told me he could see the shadow of my underarms, and again, I turned to you, the only one who could encourage me back into the pool. At 13, I replaced you with your sharp-toothed cousin, ripped my shames out at the root one by one. That pain marked the years, rings in the tree of my growing up. At 20, I left you to gather dust through the winter, until a male friend noticed my jeans rise up to expose the undergrowth of my legs, destroying the poster of womanhood he kept pinned up in his mind. In defiance, I left you untouched for another month. The feminist in me wants to believe I don't need you at all, yet before putting on shorts or dresses to model myself as a woman in public spaces, I still find myself drawn to your sleek elegance. You are still the first one I turn to when I need reminding that I am attractive. My self-confidence reliant on your smooth compliments. I can live without you, but only when the parts of me you know best are hidden. This is the newest of the poems I'm reading tonight. It was written a few weeks ago. And it's a poem about childhood. Hibiscus flowers taste like freedom. We are an age we still count on our fingertips. My brother and I spend summertime dreaming at the bottom of the garden. We tumble up the hibiscus tree, claw our way along branches that bend without breaking, as if the weight of two children is one they were designed to carry. Our fingers are tracked with grit and the dirt of freedom stains our knees. I didn't know how to fear the fall yet, whilst reaching for the brilliant red flame of petals bursting from the highest peaks of those branches. I knew only sweetness then, sucking nectar from flowers, tickles of yellow pollen at the corners of my mouth. I did not yet know to call this brave, this lack of caution, this willingness to forget the bitter bite of ants who had gotten there first, how they'd coat my unsuspecting tongue with the acid of their existence. Isn't this so much like growing up? How sometimes sweetness disguises the bite of bitter. I wish I could go back, recreate the ease with which I swung from branches, the freedom to be without a care about who I was or who I should be. I wish a day could taste that sweet again. This is my last poem, so thank you for being here and for listening so attentively. I really appreciate it. And this poem is for my love. Love without insulation. My love, you are a chemist. Notice each elemental change in me. With you, I do not feel like too much. You do not tell me to stop overreacting when my emotions are leaving me shaky and pacing. You reply to each text, fall asleep, pulling me closer every night, gathering up each part of me and holding them in your accepting embrace. You say you want to spend your life with me, have a ring board on Pinterest. I want to believe in this storybook love again. For 2 years, I learned to love my lonely, after her voice 1,300 kilometers away was the cold messenger of betrayal with the words, we can still be friends. I did not believe I could exhale into a space of comfort again. Sometimes I am still holding my breath, afraid to name any kind of happily ever after, afraid to love without any insulation around the beat of me. Perhaps a part of me is still trapped, phone pressed to my ear as the future I'd held onto is revealed imaginary. I want instead to imagine a better future, to create a ringboard of my own. We have the house and the dogs, but I want to believe in everything else with you too. The garden we work in together on a Sunday afternoon, the kitchen filled with smells of your sourdough baking, our bedroom, duck egg and grey, linen we picked out together. I want joint holidays, Christmases split between your family and mine. I want to tumble into the cold with the dog at 4 a.m., only to heat myself back up against your exothermic skin. I want to stop waiting for the end, instead call my future by your name, over and over and over again. There we go, thank you.
Melissa, thank you so much.
Zoom meeting.
For that astonishing reading. I think those are incredibly brave poems. They're poems I think that you stumble across and you suddenly feel yourself not alone in the world. Thank you so much for sharing them with us. Can we have a round of applause for Melissa, please?
Thank you.
I am going to hand over to Nondwe now to handle questions in the room, if there are any. I'm sure there will be before we have a short break.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Melissa, for that. That was so beautiful. That final poem was just, it was everything. Are there any questions? I mean, you can see all the comments. Okay, there's already a hand up. Jacques has his hand up. So we'll start with Jacques. Jacques, the floor is yours.
Oh, that's better. Okay, so my question has to do with the relationship between the poetic work that you do and the doctoring work that you do, which is clearly rewarding work and also very difficult work. It's an impossible question in a way, but do you want to say something about the relationship between those two? Is there a way that you bring, is there a way that how do you move between those two worlds? Do you find it easy? Is it a smooth transition? How does it work?
Great starting question. I think it's easy in a private way in that the work is so emotional, dealing with illness and death on the daily and having to help people make such difficult decisions for their pets and for these creatures, that having to be a voice for these creatures that can't voice for themselves. It's emotionally draining work. So writing is a way for me to process that in a private capacity. I think writing poems about it is newer, and that maybe it's basically since the pandemic, it's something more that I've been sharing. And that's through doing Poems That Don't Suck with Megan Fally, giving me that sort of encouragement that my point of view, my story is important and can connect with people no matter how unique it is. So that's something newer, but I do still find that these poems feel very niche to me. You know, they're not as easy to place in publication, or I don't always know how relatable they are to the general public. But that said, I don't know any or many other vets writing poetry, so I feel a little bit of a responsibility or something. I want to give a voice to this because it is such a emotionally demanding profession, and the statistics for suicide and that kind of thing in the veterinary profession are unfortunately very high. So it's important for me to give a voice to that as well, to bring humanity to it, because I think that's forgotten. So it's something that I'm leaning more into than yeah, don't know if that answers it.
Well, it certainly feels all the time as if everything's at stake, you know, in those poems. And thank you.
Thanks, Jacques.
Thank you, Jacques. My favorite line in one of your poems was, "You and I are architects of death." That was such a beautiful line. I can't remember which poem that's from, but like, yeah. And there are a few other people who shared some of their favorite lines from your poems in the chat. Are there any other questions? Oh, Ed has his hand up. So Ed, you have the floor.
Melissa, thank you for that brave and magnificent reading. Truly extraordinary. I don't want to say too much more than that. I thought that the poems where you use personification, very interesting to see where they go. The way you follow imaginatively, you just follow where they lead. Lots of possibilities there. My question is a question you'd probably ask somebody. The process that you follow with your writing, anything that you'd want to say about that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Ed.
Hey.
I think I write best to prompts, so I don't often just randomly sit down and write something that's amazing. So usually I write to prompts, and that can be from other people, and I've also kind of taught myself to create my own prompts, which I do share like on Instagram and that kind of thing, so that others can benefit from it, because I need them for my own writing. So that kind of gives me a starting point often to jump off from. I also find just free writing, you know, just letting the brain go, and then seeing what ideas can come from that helpful. And once I have something I feel has promise, then I'll maybe type it up, and then from there start editing and going back and forth and potentially seeking out other people's opinions. I've been fortunate to have lots of poetry friends give me feedback, and I've got to work with Megan Fally on quite a number of the poems I've read tonight, so she's been able to give me more focused feedback as well, and then working with that. Yeah, so it's there's a lot of editing, and I don't feel like they just spill out of me. They need to come from some sort of guidance.
Right. I mean, I definitely get the feeling with all of them that they are, that you follow something through in all sorts of ways, and definitely feel crafted.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Megan, in Poems That Don't Suck, Megan teaches us to ask, how does this improve upon the silence, or, you know, what's the point of this? So that's something I try and keep in mind, is to have a meaning behind it, and not just write for the sake of beauty, but for transferring something larger. Even though beauty is amazing too, but I want a bit of both.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Melissa. Itumeleng, you have the floor.
Hi, Melissa.
Hey,
Well, firstly, I just want to say well done. That was amazing. Your voice is just incredible. Like I could just listen to you like forever. Like I could like just fall asleep listening to you and then wake up and like you should still like be like reading, you know. That was just like you're really, really talented with that.
thank you so much.
So what I wanted to ask you is like, do you, I mean, and like just really thank you for like warning us because that was triggering, you know. So do you like, are you aware that like obviously like as much as you're writing as a vet and with your experiences, but when you're writing, are you aware how like obviously it's like what you're writing is also universal, it applies to like other situations, you know, and like do you like ever like get like is it easy for you to just like focus on like why you are doing this, or like do you sometimes have the responsibility of like thinking, oh gosh, okay, this is also going to apply to like another topic for someone else, you know, like how is your writing process and like being selfish and like also being considerate? I don't know if my question's clear. It's, okay.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think absolutely it can apply across to other things. I mean, death is death, and illness can be illness, and hard situations, and it isn't at all limited to my specific work. I mean, I do think that I can totally see the parallels, and I do try and give those thought as well. I try and use these experiences in a more universal way so that you can say, okay, she's talking about the death of this pet, but it could also be dealing with my own grief from the death of a loved one or whatever. So yeah, definitely try and keep that in mind as well. And I want to write, at least in the things that I'm sharing, I'd like to put things out in the world that are not harming people, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I mean, that was like so like not harmful in any way. It just, I don't know if you are aware how like therapeutic it is that you have such an understanding. I don't want to say of death, but like maybe loss, I don't know. And like it just was really comforting to like listen to you.
Thank you. That's really good to hear that that's how it came across.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dumeleng. Are there any other questions, any other comments before we take a short break and then come back for our open mic session? There is a comment by Liz. That's like the final comment in the chat. She says, meaningful and deep poems, Melissa. As a vet, a translator of silent pain, important to voice your own grief. So I hope that's what the writing poetry does for you. It's a way for you to translate your own kind of pain, grief, sense of loss, and just dealing with the day-to-day. I'm quite interested in your edit. Well, you spoke a lot about how you edit your work, and I'm very intrigued by how people approach the editing of poetry. Because I struggle with my own editing process. My editing process is more of a taking away than a putting in. So I end up with really, really short poems in general. I don't really have really long poems because my poetry is about the taking away. So how do you take away, or do you put in more, or do you just, it depends on the poem? How do you approach that?
I think it depends. I would say in general, it's not a massive taking away. It might be a little bit here and there and putting in a line here and there. Once I figured out what I want the poem to say, then it might be like figuring out where's the ending or that kind of thing. So that might come later. And then a lot of it is using, like, once you figure out what you want the poem to say, like what words are going to be the best to translate that message, both obviously and subtly as well. Like, what's that underlying theme in the poem? That kind of stuff, like just combing through line by line. Reading aloud is something I do a lot with my editing, reading it to myself. I need to hear it to actually change it. Yeah, and then playing with the way it looks on the page as well helps me with what to cut. One of my favorite editing techniques is when I've decided to name the snip and scatter, which is basically you print out your whole poem, cut it up line for line, and then on the floor or on a table, you play around with it, and sometimes you find you cut a lot based on that. My Slaughterhouse poem, that was the Poetry Prize one, actually started as kind of, there were like basically three themes in a poem, and then I did snip and scatter, and I got 2 different poems from that, and then worked on this one a bit longer and ended up with this poem. So that's something I like to do a lot. If I don't know what's happening in the poem, then that usually reveals to me the truth.
Sure. Thank you so much. I need to try the snip and
Scatter.
Oh, snip and scatter. Okay, I need to try that because I haven't tried that. Thank you so much again, Melissa. Can we please give Melissa a round of applause before we take a break?
Amazing.